auditioned, and then we cogitated for 6 months until we said, he is the single most charming human being we've encountered. There is nothing more charming out there. We have to have Boyd. With Mason, he just sent me a thing on Twitter. They just sent me a thing on Twitter. I got a marvelous Mason message saying, and it was gloriously professional, because they just said, well, has Desire been cast? And it was Mason, you were in New Zealand, weren't you?
Yeah, I was working on Cowboy Bebop for Netflix. I was in the middle of quarantining in New Zealand. And yeah, it was kind of going out of my mind. And you had been tweeting really lovely things about like the production picking back up in the fall, because I think y'all had just started shooting again. So it kind of brought it back into the ether for me. And I was like, oh, I should I should maybe get some information on this at 4 a.m. And I figured that you would have all the answers.
I feel like that is definitely something that a lot of actors will think about doing, but rarely do you actually get the response and then get cast in the role. So Mason, what did you send Neil? Do you even remember what the DM said?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a response to, Neil does this really wonderful thing where he is deeply invested and engaged in the fans that surround this work and surround all of his work. So he's constantly like responding to little messages and things and comments that people leave. And I just left a response to a Sandman related update. And I'm basically asking for my own specific update and just asked if Desire would be making an appearance in season 1. And if so, if they had cast the role yet. And Neil responded with our fantastic casting director, Lucinda Sison's information, and said that season 1 would be covering through A Doll's House, which meant that Desire would be peeking in. So yeah, it just kind of kicked off from there, and then I took a few weeks and forgot about it, and then we sent in a tape, and I think a few days later I found out that was going to be how I'd be spending, hopefully, eternity.
That is an awesome story. Neil, while you're casting a show like this or working on the casting and seeing tapes and things, is there anything specific, or was there like moments with each person where you were like, yes, this is someone who would be in the Endless family, or this is exactly like, is there something that is in each actor that's just they have like the Sandman innately in their blood when you watch their tape?
I mean, bear in mind that for Sandman season 1, we had over 330 individual speaking parts. So there were a lot of tapes to watch, because everything was being done remotely over Zoom. And it's true to say both that you don't know what you want until you see it, and also that you can very quickly learn what you don't want. With Death, we had so many astonishing actresses, really great actresses, and actresses of all ethnicities, all ages. We had supermodels, we had, stars, and not one of them could deliver the line where they tell Dream that he's the most pathetic excuse for an anthropomorphic personification on this or any other plane, and just land it and make you believe it. And I'm like, well, on the one hand, that is a terrible line, but on the other hand, Death does have to be able to deliver it. And then Kirby, Hal Baptiste came along, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I believe her. And I'd been in my head, Death had always had an American accent. I'd always assumed that one of the many Americans would be it. And Kirby came in and played it with this London accent. And it's like, okay, Death has a London accent, because I believe in her, because she can break my heart, because I believe that she could talk truth to Tom Sturridge. And I haven't believed that from anybody until now. And also, I think I'd quite like to see her when, she's there saying, you really should have looked both ways before crossing that road. So that'll do. And we asked Kirby if she'd like to get on board with the madness, and she did. I think she was like the last major part to be cast.
And speaking of that episode in particular, The Sound of Her Wings, that was one of the ones I watched a couple of times because it's just so moving and beautiful. And what is that like for you, getting to see it come to life on the screen? And then for Boyd and Mason, because obviously you guys didn't all get to see all of this stuff being shot. So what is it like for you guys getting to enjoy the show and see those episodes outside of the stuff that you shot as well?
Well, for me, I was seeing dailies. I would go on every day about 4:00 in the afternoon, New Zealand time, and I would watch what had been shot that day, and send any notes that needed to be sent in. And even with all that, when I got my first cut of the finished episode, I was not prepared. I just remember hitting the scene with Harry, the violin player, saying the Shema and dying, and tearing up and going, well, I wrote these lines. I wrote all of these words 30-something years ago, and this is ridiculous that I should be tearing up. And then we got to the end of that whole episode with Hob in the pub and Dream's final line to Hob, and I'm tearing up again, going, and there's a little me on my shoulder going, you're being ridiculous. You wrote this. How can you feel this way? But I really did. I think it's an astoundingly beautiful episode.
And have you guys, Mason, and Boyd, have you guys been able to like sit and watch, and can you enjoy it just as a viewer?
Yeah, I just finished 5. Holy shit. Because on many levels, we were shooting this during the pandemic, and there was just an isolation to it that was something that I'd never felt before, and not really in a bad way. I mean, we were just working through protocols and trying to keep everyone safe, but just it's such a communal job. Because it's like being in school almost, or it's a constant recess, and you're being able to read people's faces and talk to them, and but there was a heightened sense of just being blocked off by that, and so it made me personally just constantly wondering, are we going in the right direction? And so it just made me really hyper focused. The fact that I just went back to, my hotel. I had this really regiment process of just ordering the same room service over and over again, going out of my bubble to another bubble to another bubble, finally getting on set and having these moments with all these great actors, and then just going back. And so then seeing this show, it's holy shit. It's wow. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, it is a feat of, on every single department's like hands. To create anything during the pandemic is astounding, but the fact that we created the Sandman during the pandemic is one of the craziest things that I think I've ever heard. Because I really didn't get a chance to see hardly anything or work with hardly anyone. I was truly in a bubble of my own. I think I sat around in London for a few months, and thankfully was doing, had other things. But for the most part, I was waiting to shoot, and they shot me out in about a day and a half. I'm in 4 episodes, and it's not a insane amount of material, but it's still, they crammed in, pages and pages and we just did it like a play. So my only experience of the series at that point was really my experience talking to Neil and Alan, and being with Tom for about a day and being with Donna for half a day. And that was about it. So seeing the show, I saw it a few weeks ago, before Comic-Con, because I wanted to have a little bit of context, considering I probably was in it, or at least collectively around it, the least out of any of the main players. So I wanted to really prepare myself for what the show had turned into, because it wasn't something that I had any context on beyond a handful of scenes that I was acting in. And it is unbelievable. I'm on my second watch now. My best friend in the world is on his fourth watch of it, and everyone that I know, has really just destroyed this series. They've like streamed it and binged it so quickly, and are on their second or third watches of it. And it's so enjoyable. It kind of just gets better with time. Like, I'm having an even better experience of it now that I've already seen it than I was the first time that I watched it before Comic-Con.
Well, and I think there's something that's so cool, and kind of jumping off what you were saying, Boyd, about like being separated from everyone, that there's almost something with these characters where they're all trying to connect to humanity, and they all want to be human. They all want to have this human experience. And so it's interesting that, like, for you guys being separated and being those characters, it's almost like you want to have that connection even more. So I wonder if that is, like, for me, it feels like that maybe played into how it came across on screen. And I think that's, I totally believe in things happening at the perfect time, at the perfect reason. And it's like that feels like it works in that space. Hearing you talk about that as well, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, we didn't have, the normal distractions. You really didn't want to do anything else, because if you came down with COVID, that means that the production would shut down for 2 weeks. And it was just, it was really all about just doing the work and nothing else. So, thankful for that experience in a way.
Neil, what do you think it is about this world that connects with so many people and can do it in so many different mediums as well? Because I think there are stories that people really connect with when they read it in a novel. There are stories that people really connect with on the screen. But the fact that this can be in different mediums and, like you said, different time periods, and people are still really connected to it, new people, fans of the property. What do you think it is in particular?
I don't know. And I'm perfectly happy not to know. I think, one of the things that is fun about Sandman is that when I wrote the stories, nobody had ever done anything, for good or evil. Nobody had ever done anything quite like this before, and that went to so many different places. And that was, Clive Barker, his analogy was of an insane cook just making a layer cake with all sorts of mad things on every level of the cake. And that's kind of true. There just isn't anything that does that. And 35 years on, there still isn't anything else that does that. But I think mostly what people respond to is the joy. Even in the scariest stories, there's so much, young Neil Gaiman and his collaborators were having so much fun making this thing and trying to go places that nobody had ever gone before in comics. And I think you can feel that. I think it's still true. And I think we're incredibly fortunate now in not feeling like the material has dated too hard. We didn't have to do a lot to it. Mostly payphones have become cell phones, but that's pretty much it.
And that being said, I mentioned this earlier in the chat, but there's so many moments, first episode, where you're just seeing Morpheus in the glass and just images that are directly from the comic. Are there particular moments that you're really proud that you guys got on the screen that you're really excited for fans to see?
I think the convention is going to be really satisfying, because the show, in a way, I don't know what I consider not, but I think that it builds for that in a way, and it really expands upon it. I think the convention is going to be great.
I have like a very personal fave image. I mean, the obvious is in the first episode when Morpheus finally is released from the prison. It like literally looks like exactly like the comic. But then selfishly, I really enjoy Tom does the hair pull that exists in the final episode of the Doll's House in the comics, that between Desire and Dream, that is already, it is the hair pull heard round the world. The literal thirst tweets that I have seen because of that image are astoundingly funny. And very flattering, but really truly make me laugh so hard. People are very, very hot for for that exact moment.
I mean, understandably so. Let's be honest. Neil, is there a moment for you that, I mean, the whole thing is obviously pulled from your brain, but is there a particular frame or scene that you're super, super proud and excited for fans to get to see on their screens?
Well, for me, the holy shit moment was that when I went to visit the set when we were shooting episode 1, they wouldn't let me into the Undercroft until a film crew had got in ahead of me and were waiting to catch my reaction, because they were fairly sure that I'd be impressed. And I just remember going, oh yeah, well, how impressed am I going to be? It's a film set. And then walking in, and it wasn't. It was this giant underground place with water and flames, and there was the Sandman's globe, and my jaw dropped, and I just stood there feeling like I'd walked into my head. And so, I mean, that one moment for me, and every time in episode 1 we see Dream trapped in his globe, I flash on that. I love some of the moments that weren't quite there until all of the CGI was finished. The battle in hell, episode 4, didn't really come together until the end. There was a lot of green screen and a lot of, okay, well, it's going to be this. And then suddenly it was this, and that was amazing. And Fiddler's Green, I think, in episode 10, talking earlier about moments that made me cry. There was something about I don't want to give too much away, but the arrival in Fiddler's Green.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but the entire season 1 is on Netflix. So I think a lot of people have watched all the way through. So if we give away little spoilers here and there, I think it's okay. We're obviously not going to give everything away on here, but I'm sure that everyone joining has probably watched once or twice at this point as well.
I have to say, that is something I did. I assumed that people, when the 9 hours of Sandman would drop, and over the next week or so, people would watch all 9 hours of it. And 18 hours later, some people had already watched the whole thing twice. And now people are on their 4th or 5th watch. And I'm like, how can we? It's August the 8th. It dropped on the 5th. It dropped on Friday. It's amazing.
I mean, it's one of those things that I think, because of the fact, like what I said earlier, where it feels like there's so many layers to it, where you can watch just for the story, but also if you have read the comics, getting to watch and see those moments and those little Easter eggs, and even stuff where it's like, and like definitely let me know. But I'm like, there's moments where you see like a twinkle in his eye, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like the stars in his eyes. Where it's like how like specific small things like that. I think that's why people are watching multiple times, because there's so many layers to get out of each time you watch it. You can be watching for different things.
Yeah, I mean, literally, as someone who was knee deep in my second watch, I can attest to that because I thought I knew everything about it, and then you go back and you're just like, wow, there is so much to enjoy and discover every time. You know, it doesn't feel. There were certain episodes that I've seen multiple times now, just isolated at this point. Like A Hope in Hell is one that I feel like I've seen at least 4 times now, because it's just so fun and the show is shot so beautifully and the effects are really really gorgeous. That yeah, there's just like there are so many delicious goodies. I mean, I'm working on another project and I came to work today. And one of the first things that people I had not talked to yet or met on this set, like just started coming up to me and saying, "We finished Sandman. It's the best thing we've seen on TV like all year." Just dozens of different people that are work in the film and television industry, which was really wonderful to kind of get that kind of excitement and praise from your peers, because half of us are all incredibly tired and jaded all the time anyway. You don't really want to go to work and like talk about somebody else's TV show, but to see the genuine excitement and joy, and like I came back to my trailer and somebody had drawn me as Desire, and left it in my trailer. That like they had done it in between shots, because of how much they enjoyed the series. So it's like it's really cool to watch people latch onto it, and love it in all the different formats.
And I kind of want to hop back because I didn't get to ask you this, Mason, before, but when you're talking about going to Comic-Con, what was that experience like, getting to actually be with more of the cast and celebrate at a place like San Diego Comic-Con after we haven't had it for so long, and being a part of something like the Sandman at Comic-Con? What was that experience like for you?
That's definitely something I'll never ever forget, because it was two things sort of simultaneously happening. It was a combination of my absolute delight at finding out that everyone was really cool. I think there's this fear that maybe people aren't going to like you, or they're not going to be as geeky or as excited about the thing, and every single one of us are just the biggest nerds for this series and for the comic. And Neil, I think meeting him, yeah, I was unbelievable, because we had only met through the internet, through Zoom, and one of the first things that he did was introduce me to Patton Oswalt, who's like, "Hi, I'm Patton." I was like, I know who you are. Like, I don't know why we're doing this. I'm a fan of you." And he just geeked out about Desire, and about what's coming down the line, and different issues, and all kinds of really fun stuff. So it was just cool for us to have a moment to connect and sort of realize that we all were actually a really good fit as a group dynamic, even though none of us had previously really worked with any other person besides Tom. I feel like he was the link between all of the individual actors, and it was amazing. Like I really did kind of fall in love with every single one of the cast members over that weekend, and then throughout the press that we did the following week. And it's not often that you get invited to go to Comic-Con, and then it's also not often that you get to go to Comic-Con for something that means this much to people, and that's this beautiful and transformative. And so to see how much it meant to all of the different people that showed up to our Hall H panel, and the people I ran into in the halls afterwards, and on my way out the next day, it's a humbling and exciting thing to get to go like, oh cool, I'm amongst the throngs of geeks and fans of this thing, and I get to kind of share in it with them, from both sides. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
I love that. Boyd, what was your experience like?
Well, anybody who can not break character for 2 to 3 hours, we're going to get along really well. So the amount of people who are just in cosplay and dressing up and just embodying everything about what I'd only heard about what, Comic-Con was. It was crazy. It was amazing. My son was like dressed up as Spider-Man the whole time. It was like Mason was saying. There's like almost like a sense of harmony, because it's very rare to be around that many people at once, all coming together, and feeling this love for Neil's work, and just this comic that's been the kind of the criteria of what good work is about, and people getting excited and not let down. Yeah, it's just it's a really nice feeling.
Well, and speaking of the joy and everyone being so excited and in harmony, it makes me laugh that we have two of basically the big bads of the season on the chat with us right now. But also, Neil, for you, while you're, putting the show together, there's definitely, the diner scene specifically, for me, I was like, how are they going to do this? How far can you push this? And yes, there is such a joy in the whole story when you're trying to explain something. But my mom was asking me, she's like, are there going to be any episodes that I maybe don't want to watch because they're too much? And I was like, there might be like half of one. But what was that experience like for you, knowing that you wanted to have that joy in there, but then also you have these episodes where, to be true to the story, you have to get that stuff in there too?
I think for stories to work, you need the highs and you need the lows. So for me personally, I love episode 6. Episode 6 is a hug. Episode 6 is it's a kiss on the forehead and a squeeze of the hand, and it matters so much more because you've just gone through episode 5 and you've been taken into the dark alone and kind of left there, and it's kind of all right by the end, but you're kind of hurt. You've gone through something that is, instead of being the formalist 24 hours cutting in and cutting out thing that I did in the comics, Alan Heinberg built something that feels more like an episode of The Twilight Zone or something. And they actually wound up building that set and then rehearsing it like a play, which you never get to do on television, but they did do because COVID helped and because that was how they had to make it. And they filmed it as if it was a play. And you can feel that. You can feel that they're all there, the space. And they also filmed it in page order. They didn't, they weren't bouncing around. They just started at the beginning and shot it to the end. But it does take you a long way into the darkness. And then episode 6 is there to talk to you about death and to talk to you about life. And then to send you off into the doll's house with hopefully a slightly different mood and a different way of thinking about things.
Well, and I think I had no idea that that's how that episode was shot. But when he goes to get the ice cream and is walking through and seeing everything happen, now when you're saying it was shot like a play and just continuous, I'm like, you do 100% feel it, like that he is walking through and seeing these things happen, and it impacts you that much more. At least it did for me while I was watching. That's awesome. I love that.
And that, by the way, is one of my other favorite scenes. Just David Thewlis gets an ice cream. It is, and it's nightmarish and it's hard and it drops your jaw, and it's all about the pain of existence and what it means to be human. And David Thewlis gets an ice cream.
And now, obviously, you said we've had 9 hours, 10 hours of episodes of content for everyone. Everyone I've talked to is like, what's happening next? There's so much more story. Where do we want to see it go next? Which stories do we want to see next? For you, Neil, I don't know what you can or can't say, but there's so much more of this world to explore. Are you like, even with characters where it's like we didn't get a ton with Desire, we haven't gotten a ton with Death, that will we get to see more? Is your hope that you get to keep pushing into the world and sharing more with us on Netflix?
Yeah, Neil, tell us, are we getting more Desire?
I asked that for you. I asked that for you.
What's great is we have so far covered about 400 pages of the 3,000 pages of Sandman. So we have an awful lot more material to go. I think the next place we would go in the second season, if we get a second season, nothing is certain in this day and age. But if we do, then I think we would probably begin with a family dinner and get to see what happens when you put all the family together around a table. And then I think it might, after that, be time for a rematch with Lucifer, because I think there's a lot of, everybody would quite like to see Morpheus go back to hell. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the next thing that would happen.
Well, I'm excited for whatever we get to see next. Is there, for anybody who hasn't watched or is curious about the show, because I think that's something too, where it's like, if people don't know, stepping into this world, what would you say? And I actually might start with you on this one, Mason, if you want to jump in, and Boyd too. Like, what do you tell people about the show that don't know, where you're like, so I booked this job and the show's on Netflix, this is what it is?
I mean, I usually just say it was written by Neil Gaiman, and that's kind of all that needs to be said for a lot of people that, you know, are in my social circles, because it's, you know, I mean, Neil is synonymous with some of the greatest inventive works of literature that I've ever read, and so it's really, people are usually aware of the Sandman, and it's rare that I run into someone that isn't secretly a mega fan of it, or, you know, has a bit of script or a tattoo, you know, in honor of it. Or so I often don't really have to describe what to expect or what the show is, except for now at this point I tell a lot of people that it feels like the Sandman, which I think is something that all of us have said at some point or another in interviews or in life, and definitely something that Neil has said millions and millions of times. But it feels the way that I felt when I read the comics, just even more so imaginative and inventive. So yeah, there isn't really much else that I can say to get people psyched about
it. Yeah, if people don't, it's usually like a short list. It's like, what is the show? It's Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And if they don't know that, then it's like my mom asking me. She's like, so what is this show about? And I say, okay, you know when you go to sleep, right? She's like, yeah. You know when you have dreams? Yeah. What's about the person who creates those dreams? Oh, cool.
Yes,
so it's
go.
You know, that's what's so great about it. It's like, we all do it. It's you know, the inner fabric of our life. It's simple, but then it just keeps going, you know. And dreams are crazy. So
Neil, for you having it out now for people to watch, is there something that you hope that people take away from it when they sit down to watch?
Well, the biggest thing that I want to tell anybody who hears this, who hasn't yet watched it, I mean, the biggest thing I want to tell anybody who hears this who hasn't watched it is just that it's never going to be the same thing twice. And episodes of Sandman will always be different, and you may as well just go with it. Relax into it. And season 2, if we get a season 2, will not be like season 1. And that's a good thing, because season 3 won't be like season 1 or season 2. But it will still have all of the things that you love in it. It will have Morpheus. It will have Desire. And you'll even see more of the Corinthian. He may be dead, but how dead can a nightmare really be?
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm like, it's cutting up a little bit in and out on my end, but I feel like that was like the perfect time, because I'm like, what are you saying? What's coming next? But yeah, I think it like you said, every episode, even of this season, feels different and but it still feels like a collected universe, but each episode has a different feeling to it, which I enjoyed so much. And I think that's why another reason to add to why people want to watch it multiple times, because there is such a shift and change and a new experience with each episode. And I'm sure that those numbers where people are watching and people talking about it, and you guys getting texts from people that you haven't talked to in a long time, or tweets from people that are watching and enjoying it, are just going to keep happening and keep coming, because I know I will be rewatching episodes. I know I have friends and family. My parents are going to start watching, and so I'm sure I'm going to be texting back and forth with them as each episode gets watched. So huge thank you. I think I said this at the beginning, where it's like, it's such a cool experience, one, to get to hear your guys' experience filming the show, and Neil, your experience creating this whole world for people to play in. When, like, literally I'm sitting here and they asked me to do the chat, and I was like, of course, I literally have the 2 bound Sandman books on my shelf right behind my couch. And they were like, did you put those there for this meeting? I was like, no, they're just always there. For putting this on our, so we watch and enjoy and play in this space in a whole new medium. And massive thank you to Mason and Boyd for joining us on the Twitter Spaces chat as well. Is there anything that you guys want to say to everybody listening before we have to sadly end this chat? Mason,
Just thank you.
Yeah, just fully, yeah. Thank you for loving our show and reaching out with some of the loveliest, most positive feedback. It's just really nice to see people enjoying it. So thank you, and please keep spreading the Sandman word.
Ditto. See you in your dreams. Netflix, you guys are really smart for taking this on.
And for me, I'm just incredibly grateful.
Can you guys?
Oops. Try and see if it's my speakers. Is that better? That was it. It was my fancy speakers, my fancy headphone. I just want to say I'm so, as I said when we started this, I'm thrilled, I'm amazed, I'm astonished that the whole world is coming out for Sandman. If you love it, tell people. I mean, I think mostly the people who've come out for Sandman so far have been people who knew and loved Sandman. So now just go and tell everybody that you know who's never watched Sandman, never heard of Sandman, doesn't know what this thing is, and persuade them to watch it too. And then we'll definitely get a second season.
Oh my, wait, I think I see. She's gone. It's just us now.
Yeah. What should we do, guys?
Okay, so I have a question.
Let's run amok on Twitter.
Yeah, winner Desire and the Corinthian gonna hang out. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, we gotta get a milkshake, man.
I think that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah,
just in life,
just,
but also
just hang out, just like sit around, maybe next to a fire, a nice milkshake. But
I'm gonna break in, sign us off, guys. Maybe you're wonderful. Boyd, you're incredible. Tiffany, you're mysteriously missing in action. I can see you on my screen looking frustrated, but where you've gone, none of us can hear you, but we know that you're there. And for everybody who came on and is listening to this now and in the future, thank you so much. This is all the Sandman love in the world, and sweet dreams.
Thank you.
Amazing. Bye, everybody.